Right. Deuteronomy chapter 28. If you remember, Moses has been given instructions to when they go into the land, they're going to have to divide up into two groups on two different mountains, and there's going to be a recitation of a series of blessings and curses. All of these are going to be conditional statements, and the main word on that will be if statements. If they do this, then this. If they don't do this, then this. And so that's what we're continuing on here in Deuteronomy 28. The things that they will be listening to as they're divided up in those two groups on those two mountains. So this is not occurring in real time. This is a future event. This will be after Moses is dead in a few weeks, after they mourn him, and then when they go into the land led by Joshua. So, chapter 28, verse 1. It shall come to pass if, again, pay attention to those if statements, if thou hearken diligently. You ever had a kid hearken just a little bit, but not really diligently? We listened just a little bit, heard half the instruction, but didn't go on and listen all the way. Or maybe we've been that kid. Right? If thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments. So you've heard them, you're mindful of them, and you're following through on them. These are three big statements. If you're doing all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee above all nations of the earth. Right? So that's one of the promises. If you're heeding, observing, and doing all these commandments, then the natural nation of Israel was going to enjoy this preeminent status among all the nations, not only around them, but far off. Right? He would set them there. Are they going to set themselves there? No, it's the Lord raising them up. And that's the kicker. With all of these things, which are going to have this benefit that he's willing to give on their obedience, there's also a consequence that he's willing to put on them in consequence of their disobedience. All right. He'll set them high above all nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee. All right, so think about a football player. You're running down the field with the ball, and someone's running up behind you. All right, he's coming on to you. To overtake you is when he grabs you by the knees and you hit the turf. All right, it catches up to you. So this imagery of these blessings shall come upon thee and overtake thee. That's some really powerful language. It will come to pass. Right? If, another if statement, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord, Lord, all caps, Jehovah, thy God. Right? How did God introduce himself to Israel when he spoke on Mount Sinai? Right? He said, I am, right? I'm the Lord thy God that brought you out of Egypt. I'm the one. Don't get confused and attribute anything that you've seen to some other God. He was explaining who he is. So it's the Lord thy God, if you hearken. All right, and then we're going to go through a series of blessings. These are natural blessings that the nation of Israel was going to enjoy if they were obedient. Verse 3, blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field. All right. We had a fracture in our country because you had benefits that were going to an urban system in the north, and you had rural system that these two were competing dynamics, right? One was advantage, the other was disadvantage, the other was advantage, right? They didn't work well together, right? Just as a history example. What he's saying here is that both in the urban environment and in the agricultural rural environment, you'll be blessed. It's not going to be at the expense of each other. So your economic trading and your agricultural efforts, the whole kit and caboodle is going to be blessed. So this is very broad. Thou shalt be blessed in the city, thou shalt be blessed in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of thy body. What are we talking about? Fruit of thy body. Children. The ability to have children, the ability to safely carry children, the ability of children to survive childhood diseases. this nation was going to have the superabundance ability to safely procreate and replicate. But not only of their natural bodies, of the people, but also the fruit of the ground and the fruit of thy cattle. So you've got orchards, olives, vineyards with grapes. You've got your fields, your planted crops, your row crops, your field crops, everything that you're planting that's coming out of the ground. All of it is this abundance of blessing in your yields, right? If you could guarantee great yields in anything you planted, would that be pretty exciting? That's exactly what's being promised here, across the board. Even down to, your cattlemen, your livestock, all of your domestic animals, they will be healthy. They will bear, additional offspring that'll be healthy and they'll grow. They won't die prematurely, right? This is everything that you're touching. Your body, the ground, and the fruit of thy cattle. The increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep. So of your cattle, you got your cows or your kind, whether that's oxen or regular cows, or your sheep, right? All your flocks, right? Their offspring. This is good, right? If you're talking about an agricultural society, this is very exciting news. Are any of those things normally just a given? Right? There's some seasons that are good. There's some seasons that are bad. There are some, yields that, go up and down. He's saying that if they obey, they are going to have these good yields in their fields and in their cattle and in their own bodies. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store. Okay. We've been watching Alone, which is a silly show where there's some guy goes out and they try to film themselves surviving in the wilderness. And the ones that tend to go the longest are the ones that kill the big animal. Right? You get a moose, you get a bear, you get all this plethora of supply. Do you know what the big problem is? Keeping it. Whether you can keep it from spoiling, if it's cold enough, or keeping it from other things. So, as in, normal circumstances, apart from God supernaturally blessing it, when you have a high yield year, then you've got an additional problem of keeping it from spoiling, keeping it rats and things out of it, not letting it go bad. So not only is he going to bless the increase, he's going to bless their storage so that you've still got that full pantry, those full, storage houses, those full grain bins, wherever it is that it's being put, he's protecting it there too. All right? So it's not just a piece of it, it's the full thing so that when you go and you need something, it's there. Okay? Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest out. Going in and coming out. This is a shorthand expression found in Scripture. This is when Solomon asked for wisdom. He said, Lord, I'm just a child before thee. I need wisdom to go out and come in before thy people. Well, on one hand, you're talking about the interactions in justice, right? You're going in and out of the city gates. You've got commerce going in and out of the city gates. But also, in general, what's referring to is military exploits. When you're coming in, right, if things have gone well, you're not all just kind of ragtag running in. Like you can come in, with your head held high. We've had a good day. This is a good thing. We're blessed coming in. And then when we're going out to war or battle, right, that there's courage. There's all of this good things associated with it, as opposed to shame and your head being held down low because things are going poorly. Okay, so you'll be blessed when you come in, when you go out. The Lord shall cause thine enemies that have risen up against thee to be smitten before thy faces. So enemies that rise up against thee, you're not going out picking fights, but enemies come, they've risen up. He says the Lord will cause them to be smitten in front of your face. You'll be able to see it. And he does that in a myriad of ways. Sometimes you see that he used it, he used water, right? They look out over sunrise, they see this water in the puddle, they think it's blood, and their enemies think that the Israelites they're all dead and they've killed themselves, and they're so confused that they go into the spoils, and it's just a massacre of their enemies. It doesn't make any sense from a natural perspective. You couldn't put that on the map of here's how we're going to draw up this military campaign. God's going to grant this miraculous deliverance, but that's what he would do. So they would see before their eyes their enemies fall. They shall come out against thee one way and flee before thee 7 ways. All right, so the idea of coming in one way, you're all walking in an orderly column, right? Your armies together. Now, when your army gets their butts whooped, everybody flees. All right, and so you're running this way and he's running this way. That's the fleeing in 7 different directions. Is that it's just an absolute scattering, not kind of this stalemate of battle where you both go out and fight, you both retreat, and you don't really know who won the day. It's very one-sided. The Lord shall command the blessing upon thee in thy storehouses. So there you go, the basket again. And in all thou settest thy hand unto. All right, that's a very broad statement, right? The enterprises that you're engaged in, whatever they are, the Lord is blessing that to go well. All right? And again, we're talking to the nation of Israel. We're talking at this time. We're not going to pull this out of context and try and say, well, look, this just applies to me. We're reading what God has told that nation at that time. And again, these covenants, these promises were very conditional. Right? This is what you get to the New Testament. You look at what Jesus did in his covenant, why it's a better covenant, because it wasn't conditional on what you and I did. It was only conditional on what Jesus did, and he was able to fulfill it. And so that's why we can have rest and assurance and confidence in his covenant and his work, whereas in this only is good as long as you maintain. And we'll see from the history of Israel that they don't, and they can't, and they won't. All right, so blessings on their storehouses. I'm in verse 8. And in all thou settest thy hand to, and he shall bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. All right, so is this blessing portable? Can you take it and relocate to Australia and it all work? No, he's giving you a particular land. This is where it applies. He gave you the land. Verse 9, the Lord shall establish thee to set you up, to establish you, to make you an holy people unto himself. How many of these people volunteered to be a holy people to the Lord? None. He chose them. Right? He picked this people. He set them and said, they will be a holy people unto himself, as he hath sworn unto thee. He made a promise. He made an oath. He swore by himself, right? And you can see all of this in this small scale, little picture, looking at the natural nation of Israel. In the grander scale, God swearing to himself and selecting the people, giving himself a people, giving it to his son to redeem them. Right? All of that is the concept of spiritual Israel, the entire family of God that he set to be priests and kings. Right? That's what he's chosen in the big picture. Talking about heaven there. Here we're just talking about a natural nation and in this literal natural land. All right, so he's chosen them to be a holy people, as he's sworn unto thee, if, another conditional, if thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord thy God and walk in his ways. So it's not just you're aware of them and you're kind of mildly doing it, but you're actually going about your life in the way that pleases him. Well, what will be the impact? Well, all the people of the earth shall see. They'll see that you're so blessed. No, they see that thou art called by the name of the Lord. L-O-R-D, all caps. And they shall be afraid of thee. They're going to see the way you're conducting yourself. They're going to see that this is a holy people chosen by that God. He's blessing them like crazy. These people who try to fight, they go in a column and they scatter. They're going to be afraid of you. Right? Is Israel the largest population around there? No, they're not the biggest. They're not the baddest. But because of God blessing them, he can even bless your enemies, their enemies, to be afraid of them. Right? Verse 11, the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods. All right, your chattel, your capital products, in the fruit of thy body, your children, in the fruit of thy cattle, your livestock, the fruit of thy ground, field, orchards, vineyards, in the land which the Lord sware unto thy fathers to give thee. Okay. Kind of a summary statement for all that we've just looked at. The Lord shall open unto thee his good treasure, the heaven, to give the rain unto thee in his season, and to bless all the work of thy hand. Right? One of the ways that these things will occur, particularly in the context of the field and blessings of your animals, having what they need, he's going to give you the right amount of rain at the right time. Right? So in his season, he knows when, he knows how much. And so he's promised, just think about your pivot system, right? You got it down to this is when we're going to turn it on, this is when we're going to turn it off, and if you shuts off early, there's a problem you need to know. Right? He knew it all, and he was promising to provide that. Right? Best irrigation you could possibly imagine. So he'll bless all the work of thy hand. So that's your rain, to bless all the work of thy hand, and thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. And I alluded to this a couple weeks ago. We were talking about debt. Look, here's an example of that. They were going to have so much available as a nation and as individuals that other nations would come to them saying, hey, we would like to borrow some of your capital or resources and use them, and we'll pay you interest. So Israel was going to be a nation of lenders, not a nation of borrowers. The Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail. All right? This is a very simple word picture. David, which is in control, the head or the tail? Think of a dog. One can live without a tail. One can't live without the head, right? The head is the more important thing in that word picture. You've got the head, you've got the decision-making. The tail is reactionary, right? It's at the other end. He shall make thee the head. So Israel, you'll be the head, right? That idea of him setting you above all nations, not the tail. Thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. Right? Order, pecking order. Again, if that thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day, to observe and to do them. And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day. Right? To break one aspect of the law is to break all of it. So don't depart from any of the words to the left hand, or to the right hand, or to the left. Right? You don't get to, there's no wiggle room on this. This was the way, this is it. To go after other gods to serve them. And that's really the kind of the core of all this, is their departure starts from idolatry, of putting something else other than God as what they are serving and worshiping. All of these things they would be doing his commandments because they were serving him, because they were fearing him. That fear showed up in obedience to his word. If they didn't fear him anymore, they started fearing other gods, then we've got a big problem. Those if statements come into effect. Right? So this starts with a but. And this is a scary but. This is not a fun but. Sometimes when you've got scary things in Scripture, and then it'll go with but God. And those are very comforting. They're assuring. This is one where this one is scary. And it should make us be very thankful that we're not dependent upon this scheme in order to be saved. So, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I've commanded thee today, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. That same language of the blessing, coming upon and overtaking, right? The running football player and then tackling to the ground. The same way that the blessings were going to chase after you and grab hold of you when you're obedient. When you're not obedient, you're not hearkening, then all of these curses, and you can use the word consequences, that God was going to bring upon them. And really, this is a long chapter, but it's a mirror, right? It's parallel. So, cursed shalt thou be in the city, cursed shalt thou be in the field, right? This is the exact opposite of verse 3, all right? You will have consequences in your economic environment in the cities, in your trading and all that, and in the rural. There's not going to be one side that escapes from this. It's going to be across the board. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. All that stuff that you'd saved up from all those years of blessing or whatever, he can take that away. He can take it away really quickly. And that's verse 5. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body. All right? This is talking about the difficulty in having children, carrying children, keeping children. Everything that was been on the positive side before over there in verse 4. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. So the blessing and protection that they had on this hand, it's now been taken away, and now things are really, really hard and bad in all those areas of your fields and of your livestock and of your own children. Okay? We'll leave that alone. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. All right, that idea of whenever you're coming in and going out of your city, every venture that you're doing in and out, whether it's military campaign or trading or whatever, it's failing. It's not going well. All of it is suffering a consequence because you had not hearkened unto the voice of the Lord. And this is given at a national level. This is to the people as a whole. And if you go back and look at those languages that talked about how they were supposed to deal with individual idolaters or individual cities, if they didn't deal with those individuals correctly, then the consequence was felt by the whole nation. Okay? So, verse 20. The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke. Those don't sound like good things, right? Cursing, vexation, and rebuke in what? In all that thou settest thy hand unto do. Right? That same idea that he was blessing everything that you were touching, every venture you were trying. Here, whatever you're trying, it's going to be a rebuke. It's going to be a curse. It's going to be negative. How long? Until thou be destroyed. Right? This is pretty severe. Right? This is not the wrist slap where we're just going to, all right, here's your light correction. This is very serious scale. Until thou be destroyed, until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. Right? They're engaging in wickedness by forsaking God and serving other gods and observing those practices and not walking in his ways. They're engaging in wickedness, and so this was a natural consequence that he was going to destroy them. Right? When we're talking about the wages of sin is death, here you go. Right? It's showing it, and it's a lot faster many times. All right. Verse 21. The Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee. All right, we think about marriage. It's wonderful. Husbands should cleave unto their wife, right? That's the idea of to adhere, right? To stay close to. Pestilences are like diseases. Do you want a disease to cling close to you? No, not generally, but that's the idea, is that you won't be able to get away from it, right? It's not just, oh, it got me and now I'm okay. It's going to stick. The Lord shall make pestilence to cleave unto thee. How long? Until he have consumed thee from off the land whither thou goest to possess. Are we talking serious scale here? Yeah, absolutely. The Lord shall smite thee with a consumption. Consumption is like a wasting disease. Whether it's because you don't have enough food or whether your body is just deteriorating. But he will smite you with that consumption, with a fever, with an inflammation, with extreme burning. Right? You've got all of these different aspects of your bodily deterioration. But not only that, he can smite you with the sword, right? Take natural human enemies, with blasting and with mildew. All right, my best understanding of blasting is, think about when your crops are first coming up and you get a really high heat wind and it scorches them and they don't go any farther. So that's blasting. Too much heat, too dry. The other end of that is too much moisture and it grows mildew. Right? So everything he talked about before about just the right amount and the right time and the right season with the rain, now you're either getting too little and blasting it or too much and you're causing mildew. These aren't accidents for Israel. He was using this on purpose. And they shall pursue thee until thou perish. So those various items that he's got in his toolkit to bring wrath on Israel, they'll keep going. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be as brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be as iron. All right, so continuing this idea of rain, do you think it is a good picture to think about the sky as being like brass? You think any rain's going to come out of that? No. That's a pretty scary picture. And you need the rain in order to soften the ground, in order to till, right? They didn't have big tractors to just bust it up. And so the ground is now hard as iron. So good luck trying to plow and put down furrows and put down seed, and then you don't have any rain to water it anyway. All right? The Lord shall make the rain of the land powder and dust. The rain shall be of the land powder and dust. All right? Is it literally going to rain water that turns into powder and dust? Probably not. But think about your pictures and scenes from the Dust Bowl. You've lost all the moisture. You now got soil and everything being blown around, and the only thing that's coming down is more dirt and dust and pretty miserable, dry conditions. There's some pretty interesting word pictures in here. This is pretty stark. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Remember, the promise before is that the enemies would be smitten before you. Well, this time, you will go out one way. All right, we're going out of our cities to battle. We got one big old column. and shall flee 7 ways before them. It means you're just scattered to the wind. You're running for your very lives. And shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. All right, this is going to occur in 2 phases. The first will be when the Assyrian Empire has grown to kind of dominate the Middle East, and the northern kingdom is going to be captured by the Assyrians. And in fact, the Assyrians are going to conquer most of the southern kingdom of Judah too. Later, the Babylonians, about 120 years later, are going to conquer the Assyrians. They're going to be this dominant power, and that's when all of Judea, the southern kingdom, will be conquered too. And the individuals are taken out of their land, and they're spread throughout that kingdom, right? It's a lot easier to have a conspiracy, a sedition, to try and overthrow the overlords if you're there together with your own people. It's a lot harder if you take those people and you just scatter them out. So if you had, everybody from Tifton and you scattered them all across the United States, you're not with people that talk like you or act like you or have the same God as you. The ability to cause, a common revolt is greatly minimized. So that's when that'll happen. Probably close to 1,000 years later. That's going to be 1,500 years later. They haven't even gone into the land yet. And God is already telling them the consequence they're going to face when they disobey him. Okay? And thy carcasses shall be meat unto all the fowls of the air. Again, stark imagery. And unto the beasts of the earth. Right? If you've got a battle and there's not enough of you survived and organized to be able to clear the field of your dead, what happens to the dead? They're eaten by vultures and by wild animals. That's a pretty serious whooping. Okay, so that's just it. Your carcasses shall be meat, and no man shall fray them away. All right, I had to look up fray. It means to scare the birds away. Right? So you got the vultures coming down. You don't even have somebody, not even to bury everybody, but just to kind of like scatter the birds. All right? Ooh. Gets even more graphic. The Lord shall smite thee with a botch of Egypt, and with emerods, and with a sebe, and with the itch whereof thou canst not be healed. All right, so think about STDs, think about unmedicated, untreatable diseases, particularly in private areas. That's what he's talking about. This is not pleasant stuff. And that last of it, which cannot be healed. They happen, and then you have them the rest of your life. Emerods, we probably call those hemorrhoids today. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. So as if the physical impact on your body, he can smite you with madness. That's literally taking away your sanity. Do we see that with Nebuchadnezzar? He can take away your physical sight. So you can lose your sight and the astonishment of heart. You can lose your courage. So you lose your mind, lose your sight, lose your courage. Thou shalt grope at noonday as the blind gropeth in the darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. The idea of groping is you don't know what to do. You don't know where to go. So here, this is not talking about someone who's literally lost their sight, but the path that you think of, here's what I'm going to get out of it, it's not working. You're just grasping at straws. Okay? Thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. Thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore. Spoiled does not mean like an overindulged child, but it means your stuff is taken and stolen by the stronger parties. And no man shall save thee. Doesn't matter what treaty you come up with, what natural human plan, you can't undo this. Right? There was no way that they would be delivered. Verse 30, thou shalt betroth a wife, that means to be engaged, and another man shall lie with her. Why? Because you're dead. Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes. This is the exact parallel from back in chapter 20, verses 5, 6, and 7, where the generals were supposed to ask, has anybody gotten engaged and not married her? Anybody built a house and not had a chance to sleep there? Who has a vineyard and not had a chance to eat of the fruit? Y'all go home, right? I don't want you to die in this battle. Y'all go home. So here he's saying these curses that that'll be the scenario. That bitterness of disappointment, even those who are going to be excused from the battle before, they're going to suffer here too. Okay? Verse 31, we're going to describe a series of injustices. All right? These are crimes, and they're open, they're notorious, and you're not going to get any justice. All right? Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. All right? So if you've got an ox, you slay it and you roast it, okay, happy day, it's a party. Your neighbor comes, you see him, he takes your ox and he kills it, and you don't get any of it, you're pretty upset. Right? Well, this is the scenario, but you're not going to get any satisfaction. You shall not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. All right, so, in Job, they had these big herds of asses when people came in and they killed the servants. They took those asses away. Did they ever see those again? No, they were gone. Same thing for an individual here. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. All right, given to your enemies. All right, so you go before the judge, and the judge takes your stuff and gives it away. Right? It's wrong, but there's no recourse. There's no rescue. There's no justice in the land. These wrong things are occurring. Thy sons and daughters shall be given unto another people. Thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand. So as if it's not bad enough to have your stuff to be taken, now your children are being taken and sold into captivity away from you as slaves, and you don't see them again. Right? This is not again, they'll be captive and then maybe you'll see them again later. It's your eyes will fail. You'll die waiting to see them again. There shall be no might in thy hand, right? There's not going to be any strength. You can't overdo these things. You've been made weak. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up. All right? There's a difference between your enemies around Canaan. They're known neighbors, right? They're going to have battles back and forth. This is saying God's going to bring in someone that you don't even know of yet. And that's just referring to the Babylonians and the Assyrians. And they're going to come and eat your stuff. Thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always. Oppressed, crushed, destroyed, perished. These are some pretty stark terms. So thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes, which thou shalt see. Literally, the idea is that things are going to be so bad that it's going to drive you nuts. It's going to drive you crazy that this is going on. And you're so upset by it. The Lord shall smite thee in the knees and in the legs with a sore botch that cannot be healed, from the sole of thy foot unto the top of thy head. Botch, that's boils, ulcers. Just think of gross, oozy things. But from the soles of your feet to the top of your head, again, that's the picture of what happened with Job. Right? The idea that your entire body can be just this gross and contemptible thing. If you're ever taking your health for granted, there's a good reason not to. The Lord shall bring thee and the king which thou shalt set unto thee unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. All right, so that nation that was going to come and eat your stuff that you don't know, he says, I'm going to take you and your king. I remember back in, I think it was like chapter 17, where he told them, eventually you're going to want a king, right? He's the king, but they're going to want a king to go out before you, and he's going to have to do these things. And when that happens in Samuel's day, God tells them, they haven't rejected you, Samuel, they've rejected me. So this king that they don't have yet, that he knows that they're going to ask for, when it comes time to punishment, he's going to say, I'm going to take you and your king that you put over you, and I'm going to take you away to this people you haven't even heard of yet. Okay? Unto a nation which thou nor thy fathers have known, and there thou shalt serve other gods, wood and stone. Now, is this giving them permission to serve gods of wood and stone? What was the event that caused all these things to happen? They had forsaken God in that land that he'd given them and were serving other gods, gods of wood and stone. He says, all right, I'm going to do all this to you, and I'm going to take you out. You're not going to serve him in my land. You can go serve him over there in captivity. thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword. All right, is it a good thing to be a proverb or a byword? No. All right. If you're the village idiot and everybody just says, oh, look, there's Jack. Hey, don't be a Jack. All right? Where it becomes shorthand for bad things. So that you as a nation of Israel are going to have that negative association with all that's happened to you because we had used to be afraid of you and all these blessings that you have. And now you've been reduced down to nothing among all the nations whither the Lord shall lead thee. All right? Very specific into how is he going to impact their field life. You shall carry much seed out into the field, but thou shalt gather in little, for the locust shall consume it. And we're reading Little House on the Prairie with Elizabeth and Pa and them are getting their crops out there, and then there's this massive swarm of locusts, and it just ate everything. It's not something I've ever experienced or seen, but that shot their crop for the year. You had to go find work. And so the Lord is directing these locusts to come. So regardless of how much they try and go and plant, they're not going to bring in very much. You shall plant vineyards and dress them. All right, you're going to be working hard, but neither drink of the wine, nor of the grapes, nor gather the grapes, for the worms shall eat them. So you got locust at his bidding. Here you've got worms attacking your grapes. So you don't get to eat the grapes, and you don't get to have any wine. Thou shalt have olive trees throughout all thy coasts, but thou shalt not anoint thyself with oil, for thy olive shall cast his fruit. My understanding of casting your fruit is that's when the thing falls off before it's ripe. You're not good for anything. So if we had our pecans out here and they just started to grow a little bit and then they all fell down, well, they never had a chance to mature and have the fruit develop. And so if you've got as many olive trees as you want, doesn't matter, you can work them really hard, they won't produce. Right at the end, they'll cast their fruit. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. So no amount of work, doesn't matter if, well, we just got to plant more. We just got to have more olive trees. We just got to work harder. We just got to have more kids to replace these ones. Right? There was no amount of man-made effort that was going to override this. Okay? All the trees and fruit of thy land shall the locust consume. Now, that's a very broad statement. That's very scary. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. Right? Remember, throughout this, there's been admonitions to not mistreat the stranger. Right? This is someone who is not a member of Israel. This is someone who's sojourning there. I mean, they're to be kind to them. Generally, they're not considered to be the poor, to be the richest. They're only poor. Here it's saying that person who you used to regard lowly now has better conditions than you do. He's raised high above you, and you have been brought very low. He shall lend unto thee, that stranger. He shall lend unto thee, and thou shalt not lend unto him. You can't lend if you don't have anything extra. You're having to borrow because you don't have enough to eat, right? He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. So this is your inverse of verses 12 and 13. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee. Right? They're going to catch you, till thou be destroyed. Why? Because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which he commanded thee. And they, all these curses, shall be unto thee for a sign, and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. So God is doing this for a reason. He is showing something by rewarding or bringing down the judgment and consequence for their disobedience, and doing it in this overt way where it would be a sign that he's doing it. This is not just, oh, we just had a bad year. Oh, shucks, luck stinks. No, this was the hammer was coming down, and it was blow after blow after blow after blow. Okay? Verse 47, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all these things. Right? So, Megan and I were talking about this earlier. Often we think about the Old Testament in terms of these are outward acts. We don't really get into the inward heart issues. And Jesus drew out those heart issues. They were still there. You didn't serve with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all these things. God had blessed them with all this abundance, or he will when they go in, But rather than continuing to joyfully and gladly serve him, they turned away. And as a result, he's going to take those things away. So since you're not going to serve him with joyfulness, he's going to have you serve someone else. He's going to have you serve your enemies. You'll be captives and slaves. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee. Who's going to send them? The Lord, right? These were targeted. How will you serve them? In hunger, in thirst, in nakedness, in want of all things. Want means lack. You're hungry, you're thirsty, you're naked. That's pretty hard. And now you're a servant too. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck. Sometimes when you see imagery in the Bible about a yoke, sometimes it's a yoke of wood and it's broken off. Is it easy to snap a yoke of iron? No, that's the picture. That's the point, is that this is not one that you are going to easily get out of until he have destroyed thee. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the ends of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. All right, this is not going to be a local enemy. This is someone from far away, coming in quickly. You don't understand their language. He's going to send them. They're going to be fierce. A nation of fierce countenance, so their face is stern, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor unto the young. That means they're not going to show mercy, right? If we were to go into a country today, I hope, if you come across elderly people and children, we wouldn't kill them. That's not what they should expect here with the Babylonians. This people, they don't know who's going to come. When the Lord sends them, it's going to be fierce. It's going to be, don't expect any form of mercy. He shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed. All right, so as long as there's still stuff, they're going to be here and they're going to consume it until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kine, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. This is not just going to be a little taxation, right? A little tribute situation where, okay, we beat you, now you're going to serve us. It's we're going to take it all, and all, and all, and all, until you're gone. This is pretty stark warning. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates. Remember, gates is synonymous with cities. So is he just going to attack one of your cities? All of them. He will besiege all of your cities. In order to have someone to besiege a city, what do you need? A large force. In order to have enough forces to besiege all of your cities, what kind of force do you have to have? Huge. Right? So he's going to come and besiege all thy cities until thy high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou trustest. All right, what had they put their hope in? That we've got enough military defensive fortifications to be able to withstand the enemy. Not when the Lord is sending the enemy. All right, so you're trusting in those walls. He said they're going to come down throughout all thy land. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all the land which the Lord thy God hath given thee. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body. All right, we're talking cannibalism here. We're talking about a besieging that's going on. When it's besieging, the city's surrounded. No food gets in. No people get out. Food runs out. People start starving. It gets to the point where people are consuming their own children. That's what's being described here. Thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and thy daughters, which the Lord hath given thee, in the siege and in the straitness, wherein thine enemies shall distress you. That's how bad it's going to be, how long these sieges will take, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate. All right, so we're talking about the most, soft-spoken, effeminate, luxury-covered guy. By the time this siege is ended, he is going to be looking at his brother and at his wife and at his surviving children, and he is not going to share the child that he's already slain and is eating. This is horrible and graphic. But this is how bad it is going to get for Israel. So the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eyes shall be evil towards his brother, towards the wife of his bosom, towards the remnant of his children, which he shall leave, so that he will not give any of them of the flesh of his children whom he shall eat, because he hath nothing left in him in the siege and in the straitness, wherein thine enemies shall distress thee in all thy gates. All right, well, is it just going to be for the men? No, it's also for the tenderest woman, the tender and delicate woman among you, whom would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness. All right, so this is a girl who would never walk barefoot. All right, this is someone who probably needs to be carried around town in like one of those little, I don't know what they call them, little totes. The fanciest and just, litter, that's the word, yeah. Even her, she's going to get at the point where her eye is evil towards her husband of her bosom, towards her son and towards her daughter, and towards her young one that cometh out from between her feet, her own children, towards her children which she shall bear, for she shall eat them for want of things, secretly in the siege and of straitness, wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee in thy gates. Right, this is bad, this is harsh, this is horrible. This will be the consequence. If thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and fearful name, the Lord thy God. Right? It's not like they weren't warned. I mean, sometimes as parents, I wouldn't do that. And we don't really say what the consequence is going to be, because often we don't really want to have to commit to whatever that consequence is. I wouldn't do that. That's not a good idea. But if I say, I wouldn't do that, then when they do that, what do we have to do? Follow through with the consequence, right? The child is warned, right? They have been thoroughly warned that things will be very, very bad if they, abandon serving God. And if they serve him, things will be very, very good. From a logical, just man-only perspective, does it make sense for them to comply? Yeah. Will they? No. Right? And that's the pattern we're going to see over and over and over and over and over again, which reveals something about mankind, about something that is within us, and we call that the sin nature, that total depravity, of that on our own, we can't serve God, and we won't. Even when, from just a cost-benefit analysis, it really made a lot of sense for them to. Okay? So they are to, if you do not observe all the words of this law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and fearful name, the Lord thy God. The Lord there is Jehovah, thy God is Elohim, the Almighty, the powerful, the eternal God. If you're not going to fear his name, verse 59, then the Lord will make thy plagues wonderful, marvelous, awe, and terrifying. And the plagues of thy seed, multiple generations after thee, great plagues, and of long continuance, and sore sicknesses, and of long continuance. Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou wast afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee. And so we've got to get the kind of catch-all language of that. We've listed a lot of things specifically, all those diseases that have been afflicting Egypt, and kind of a wicked nation there. You are afraid of them there. They will all come, and they will stick to you. Okay? Also, every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, them will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. That's the catch-all. And anything that's not written down, that too. Until what? You shall be left few in number, whereas ye were as the stars of heaven from multitude. Right? The nation of Israel is going to grow to this massive, massive number. It says you're going to be brought down to just a few. Why? Because thou wouldest not obey the voice of the Lord thy God. It shall come to pass, as the Lord rejoiced, or gladly, he rejoiced over you to do you good and to multiply you, so shall the Lord rejoice over you to destroy you and bring you to naught. Right? He's going to gladly follow through on this. Right? He said this is what he'll do, and he'll follow through. To destroy you and bring you to naught, to bring you to nothing, bring you down. And ye shall be plucked from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. Right? When they take it into captivity, they are picked up and they are carried away. They weren't voluntarily leaving. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, and from one end of the earth even unto the other. By the time of Esther's day, when they described this plot to kill the Jews, they had to send out these letters to all these different provinces that the Persian king was over, because the Jews had been spread throughout it, all over the place. All right? So from one end of the earth to the other, there thou shalt serve other gods. He's not going to allow you to serve them here and in this land, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, referring to those gods, even of wood and stone. And among these nations thou shalt find no ease. All right, so just because you've gone into captivity doesn't mean things are going to get better. It says you're not going to find it easy. Neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but the Lord shall give thee a trembling heart and failing eyes and sorrow of mind. All right, so you got a faint heart, you got a faint body, you got a faint mind. Now, this is all your distress, your anxiety, your precarious situation there in captivity is going to be bad. Thy life shall hang in doubt before thee. All right, your life is literally hanging in the balance every day. And thou shalt have fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of thy life. Aren't you glad you're not operating under this covenant? No assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, would God it were evening. We just got to get to this day. I wish it was night. All right, let me get through this day. And in the evening you'll say, would God it were morning. I wish it were morning. Like, this is awful. I don't like the night. It's terrible. Let me get to the daylight. For the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt have fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. So your internal fear, and then also the things that you're seeing that are adding to your fear. You're just, every day is miserable. You're just trying to get through it. If it's morning, you want it to night. If you want it night, you want it to be morning. And then eventually there in verse 68, the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. I don't think we're literally referring to them being carried by ship back into Egypt, but Egypt was this location of bondage and oppression, right? And they all came out at once. Well, I'm going to send you back into bondage and oppression, and that's what they would experience. By the way, whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy thee. So at some point, in this captivity, they may literally have made their way back to Egypt, but you know what? There wasn't even a market for them. Right? If you bring a shipload of slaves to market and no one wants those slaves, do you think those slaves live very long? Right? They're only useful if they can be sold. Otherwise, you've got to maintain them. So this is dire straits. If you have about 14, 15 verses of the blessings, 14 verses of blessings, and the rest is 68 verses. The rest of it was the very specific curses and consequences that was going to come down upon Israel. And guess what? You read the rest of the story. It's exactly what happened. They departed from him, and he was patient. He was long-suffering. He gave them many opportunities to repent. And eventually all this was brought to a head. I know that was a lot. I know that was long, but there really wasn't a good pausing place anywhere in that. So hopefully that was helpful.